Hi, this is Rahman Sheikh. Welcome to Fortnightly Railway Transportation Systems Podcast. I am the host and railway systems specialist working in this industry for 24 years and counting. This podcast is primarily focused on railway experts who have vast amount of experience and contributed greatly to this amazing industry. This is not a technical seminar but focuses on feel good stories, individual journeys, their success and failures, motivating younger generation to kickstart their career in railways and creating a sense of pride for the railway people who devoted their lives on the most environment friendly public transportation. Our guest for this fortnight is Brandt Clifford, a distinguished principal consultant renowned for his expertise in human factors, safety, and engineering. With an unwavering commitment to a person centered approach, Brandt emerges as a human factors and ergonomics SME, as well as a proactive leader, adept at both strategic decision making and service provision. By placing human considerations at the heart of his endeavors, he has catalyzed remarkable safety enhancements, orchestrated transformative changes within business units and organizations, and spearheaded systems design and adoptions across high-risk industries. Brandt's illustrious journey is characterized by his adeptness in offering independent counsel and fostering collaborative initiatives in sectors as diverse as rail, healthcare, and oil and gas. His steadfast dedication is evident in his consistent ability to navigate the intricacies of human system interactions, complex socio technical systems, harmonizing human well-being, system safety, and operational excellence. Beyond his exceptional professional achievements, Brandt Clifford assumes the mantle of an accomplished leader. His seasoned leadership has seen him effectively manage groups of professionals with prominent organizations. Moreover, his role as chairman of the board for a number of sporting entities underscores his multifaceted talents and committed to diverse domains. As an embodiment of innovation, insight, and impactful leadership, Brandt Clifford continues to shape the landscape of human factors and safety engineering. Brandt leads a multidisciplinary team of experts across two small advisory businesses, Brandt Rail and Brandt HFSC. Brandt Rail is working in Australia, Asia, and North America. Brandt HFSE solely working in Australia. Welcome to Railway Transportation Systems Podcast, Brandt.
Armin, what an intro. Thank you, mate. It's lovely to be here. I'm excited to be on RTS. Thanks for having me.
Likewise, I was keen to interview you for a long time. Before we kick off, as my generic first question, can you briefly introduce yourself to our audience, please?
You've done such an amazing job, mate. To add to your amazing intro, really, I'm just a bloke having a go with a great team around me. I suppose if you go all the way back post-school, I did a business management degree straight out of school and at the wonderful Queensland University of Technology. I had this idea that as soon as you go to uni, you come out and whatever you did at uni, that's what you did. So I had mates that were doing teaching and they came out as teachers. Nurses came out as nurses. Doing a Bachelor of Business Management, I didn't come out as a manager. I had all this theory, thought I knew leadership, I knew management, I knew organisational strategy, I knew entrepreneurship. You don't just walk out of uni and you're a manager. And as a 22-year-old, I didn't realise this. So I went back and did a Bachelor of Applied Science, focusing on human movement and biomechanics, and was in healthcare, was doing some clinical work, watching people get injured and treating those injuries, and thought there's got to be something more to this. Systems are complex. I keep seeing the same people coming into clinics all the time with the same sort of issues. We've got to be able to prevent these things. And I was doing some functional capacity evaluations for the railways and looking at Queensland Rail at the time and the tasks that different people did, both track workers and drivers, and thought, geez, there's something more to this. So jumped into human factors and was working at Caltex Oil Refinery, looking at control rooms and operators and petroleum refining, and then went to Queensland Health and looked at mortuary design and birthing suite designs and obstetrics, operating theatres, some really good human-centred design processes in design of healthcare environments, but also managing patient safety and nurse errors, people handling errors, operating theatre errors, and preventing those in a complex system. And then saw an advertisement for Queensland Rail to join the human factors team there and couldn't get there fast enough. The railway is such an amazing family. Despite many people saying there's the right way, the wrong way, and the railway, when you get there, you actually work out that they're fair income. And so join the railway and have been in rail and focused on rail for a long time since then and just love it.
Me too, mate. Me too. What an introduction. And I'm glad you are here and adding value to the industry. Going back to your specialization, how does your specialization in human factors contribute to safety improvements within high-risk industries like railways?
Well, people earmark human factors people as lab coat wearers that are gold plating stuff and can occasionally get a bad name for ourselves. But really, HF and ergonomics is all around us. When you pick up your phone, there's some usability issues. There's some fundamental design and anthropometrics. Then when you go to the airport, there's wayfinding, there's security management, there's control. All of these things that are all around us. And when we go to complex socio-technical systems in high-risk industries, petroleum, healthcare, aviation, railways, what we're talking about is this combination of things that interact with each other. And the focus is of helping to drive safety improvements, not the low-hanging stuff, not the slips, trips and falls and hold the handrails. This is, Clapham Junction or Waterfall, understanding from a preventative view, how have these things occurred? And let's prevent them. And there's been a number of things that come through normal operations that we can learn from with it. So it's really this scientific discipline, understanding with data and evidence how systems interact and not just pointing the finger at the poor bugger at the front line. How does the entire system contribute to safety? And then from a methods and evidence base, how do we improve that? I think generally the railway does a very good job of that, but understanding the nuances of normal operations and how work is done in reality, not how work is imagined when we're sitting as engineers in a lovely room designing systems, getting out there and understanding what is fair income done. And often the person at the front line is what's saving the day. They're not necessarily violating, doing things that aren't how work was imagined to make the system function. Because we know the trains keep turning up, the railway functions really well, and there's this whole complexity of systems just in the background. But drivers, signallers, controllers, the system is pushing through. Signalling engineers in CBTC, all of those things.
Amazing answer. Really, I completely concur with you. I have practically seen this and worked with this. It's really a great scientific area, human factors.
Oh, thank you.
And Brandt, as I read out in your entry, could you elaborate on your approach to person-centered leadership in the realm of safety and engineering?
Yeah, I think this is the true style of leadership. I know it would be surprising to think a human factors person that finds themselves in a leadership role would take a person-centered approach. But this is a real shift away from authoritarianism or from situational-based leadership. This is around understanding your team, understanding the entire goal. So again, it's evidence-based and data-driven. Where are we going? And bringing everyone on the journey and surrounding yourself and the team with experts. It's not, as the leader, I shall ride the horse forward and lead by example and everyone will just follow me and I'll do what I'm doing. I'm not an expert in many fields and no leader is. So it's about understanding the team around you, understanding what drives them. So some people have different drivers and get motivated in different ways and need to come on the journey to where we want to go in different. So person-centered leadership is understanding each individual as an individual and understanding the entire team as a team and the organisation as a system and together leading forward.
Wow. If you have to define person-centered leadership in one sentence, what that would be?
You'll probably learn, mate, I can't have one sentence. I think it is individuals and systems coming together to achieve a common outcome.
Beautiful. Thanks, Brandt. I know you can get that. Listening to you on human factors. So, Brandt, you're a combo of human factors, safety, and engineering. It's a great skills. I know it's not easy. Your job is really, really tough because I personally witnessed many human factor specialists in my career. Can you provide examples of how you can effectively integrate human system interactions in our daily work?
Really good question, mate, in terms of tangible integration. I've been lucky enough. Example, I'll focus on railways since RTS is a rail-focused podcast and you do such a wonderful job, and our listeners will be most interested in that. Over working in both an operating environment, in a rail infrastructure manager, in a above rail operator, and in rolling stock design, and in signal box and control room design, I've seen multiple opportunities where we can integrate human systems interactions. In your world, looking at developing a strong concept of operations for driverless trains, or for driver-only operations, or for the introduction of new signalling systems, those big sort of system changes that bring us a whole step change is a great example where through developing a meaningful ConOps, we can show where the human fits in the system, what optimizes human performance, and allocate tasks between a system and a human, provide the best outcome. I've also been able to look at from a passenger view for those not in the railways themselves, but for our listeners that love getting on trains. I've been lucky enough to work with a number of rolling stock designers and manufacturers and been part of that design team where we've thought about individual passengers, especially around accessibility and universal design. So designing for the myriad of people who get on our railways and that need that for day-to-day commuting, need that for getting to their hospitals or healthcare, to get to holidays, for long distance travel, and all the many things that our customers jump on the train for. And that means understanding all the different user profiles that do that, and then how our railways can best suit their needs. And we can change designs as a result and understand their system interactions and optimize their experience.
Beautiful answers. Great examples, Brandt. Especially, I have recently seen a video on such thing where they have tested with real people, real scenario, couple of combination of young kids, old people, physically handicapped. It's an amazing job. Appreciate to you and your HF team. Moreover, in the today's world where we talk about work-life balance and also hitting milestones, how do you balance optimizing human well-being with ensuring system safety and operational performance?
Yeah, it's a tough juggle. And this is one where we've got multiple stakeholders. This is where understanding the design limitations or the system limitations, depending on where in the life cycle you are, has a big impact. A good example is, say, for our friends in West Australia or in Queensland, you've got narrow gauge rolling stock, got very small corridors, and therefore the limitation of where you can work and what you can do is tight. Or for our light rail users, to optimise the passenger comfort and accessibility for the general user, getting on and off, we want very minimal gaps. We want really low floors and easy access. But for the crew, that creates some space requirements. We need some good operational skills to be able to couple and uncouple a set, for example, or to tow a rolling stock in a degraded mode. And so now we're talking access to a coupler that's 300 mil from the ground. This is very difficult to optimise operational efficiency and human comfort and well-being in such an environment. So then we're trying to work within those parameters. We don't want to compromise on access for the passenger because that's our ultimate goal, but we still need to make sure it's safe and healthy and efficient for our crew and recovery units and even emergency services. So now we're trying to play with forces. We're trying to look at how can we decrease the force of different things? How can we have extendable arms on coupler units? How can we automate some of that process so from the cab, the coupler can be deployed so we don't have to rely on getting our fingers down there or bending over or pulling things out. So it is a real balance. I think the main goal of both safety and human factors in that environment is understanding human performance and what can be done to maintain healthy postures, healthy forces, and ensure that that task can be done over and over by as many different people as possible, whether that be a small female who's just joined the railway as a young employee or a seasoned big 95th percentile male. Everyone needs to be able to perform that task safely.
Wow, what an explanation, Brandt. I think these are the great narratives, and who are especially joining new in this area, they would really appreciate your talk. I know you got great skills, no doubt in it, but implementation and skills are two different tasks. So we know you have skills. In what ways have you collaborated with industries, especially railway, healthcare, and oil and gas, to provide valuable advice and guidance?
Good one. I think collaborating is the real key. That's the trick to user-centered design, isn't it? But it's also the trick good leadership. Working across the industries is an interesting one, where fundamentally the principles are similar. Understand risk profiles, move away from that day-to-day grind of work as imagined or measuring things that don't really impact LTIFR or SPAD rates that really give us no information about what has contributed to such events, near misses. And so all of those industries measure things like that and they report up and people feel good about themselves and we've seen a reduction, but really there's no meaningful understanding of what's contributed. So collaborating across those industries, we can understand complex systems all behave in a similar way. And as such, the human is just one aspect to that. So when we think about data and evidence and can drill a bit further and start collecting meaningful data, that allows us to then deep dive into some more preventative strategies and understanding how the system contributes to such events. Let's think of an example. Going and asking end users of what they see with a magic wand. So my best example is going to the front line. I've done this in healthcare, in oil and gas, and in rail. And went to a birthing suite, sat with some midwives. I've never given birth to a child. I'm not an expert and I never will. So using that toolbox and consulting with them and saying, doing a lot of user-centered design process and user consultation, but then at the end, close your eyes. I've given you a magic wand. If you had unlimited resources and you could attack just one item, what would it be? And interestingly, they will go for not just the biggest headache in their day-to-day environment, because these are frontline professionals. They'll go for the item that is high risk. It might be low frequency, high consequence. It'll be, I remember 5 years ago, I had a shoulder dystocia and I had to rush the mother standing up, turn the baby, and then get into the operating theatre to make sure both were safe. This is important. So, okay, how do we design to ensure that I've got good visibility and good understanding? How do I aid decision-making to prevent that rush occurring? That's no different in all industries.
Wow, listening to it looks really complicated, not easy. You might have faced in applying this, you might have faced several obstacles, no doubt in it. Could you share instances of challenges you have overcome while implementing safety engineering solutions in high-risk contexts?
Yeah, this is tough, Raman. Often when we're trying to progress benefits for the greater safety, there's a cost and a time impact generally. So building good business cases, I think, is the real trick to performance improvements, especially from an engineering view. We need to justify why we want to spend money and time to get an outcome that sometimes is hard to value. And I've heard other people on this wonderful RTS podcast talk about value of life and engineering justifications of significance. And all of those things do need to come together. It is difficult then to sell that forward to management, to treasury, or depends on, if you're a government-owned organisation or private-owned companies. But generally, we can show meaningful improvements. And so it's trying to measure that change. So if you can come with data and measure how the impact or the safety change that you're trying to achieve, and it might be as simple as a notch in a master controller, a simple notch around a position in the master controller into the powering range or the braking range might give us some tactile feedback for the end user. It can also link to power consumption, can improve carbon emissions, can improve wear on traction motors and bogies and brake pads. So you're looking at the system as a whole, saying we can get a safety benefit from driver being able to maintain a heads-up position, from understanding where along the braking curve they are, a simple detent in the master controller. And I know now I'm at half brake. That half brake might not be exactly 50% of braking capacity. It might be optimal braking when you talk to the brake engineer, which actually improves brake wear and tear and power consumption. So combining those things together to think, how can we as a system build a good understanding to make a change and then show multiple benefits, not just a simple safety benefit? I think trying to build those things.
Wow, great answer. Brandt, this one particular question which we just discussed probably could take 30 minutes because it requires such a great analysis and it's safety critical. It takes lots of time, effort, cost, money, resources, everything. Great answer. I loved listening to you, Brand. Thanks for sharing. One typical question. We have been discussing so far about safety, human factors, engineering, but there is a other side of you, which is leadership and an entrepreneur. As you run two companies, consultancies, as I read in your intro, can you provide insights into the strategies that you employ to manage groups of professionals within large organizations?
At the moment, my team's pretty small. But there's only the three of us, and we're doing some great work. And so that's really an intimate team. And my strategies there is just part of the team. I'm not senior. I have a pretty flat structure, and we all contribute and challenge. And I think the advantage is everyone can challenge everyone, and we're not having a crack at people. It's open discussion and it's evidence-based. It's great for independent review. It's great for challenging thinking, and it comes up with better outcomes as a result. When you've got a big team, and I've had teams of 63 direct reports at one stage.
Wow.
They're big, and they're multidisciplinary is the trick to that. And I think that was important for good performance outcomes for the team, but also the organisation. And I think the strategy there is back to that person-centred design leadership, but also having a clear vision and managing at the level and decision-making that your team needs. So is it strategic? Are you sitting at a level 2 management role? Are you in the weeds of day of ops and it's get up and churn? Or is it somewhere in between where you looking at that 2 to 5 year plan and then bringing everyone along on that journey? So we're all chasing the same thing. I think that's the real trick, and that's around communication. If you're communicating well with your team and you've got an open door policy, I know most of the time I tried not to sit in a little office or in an ivory tower. At one stage at one organisation, I went kicking and screaming from moving from down in the main depot to up in the head office building in the main city. It really takes you away from being a meaningful leader. So I think sitting with the team, having an open door policy and working through those challenges and having people come, and that's where the best work's done. And that is difficult at the moment with not so much same room discussions, Teams meetings. It's a challenge.
Communicating is one of the key skills. I have heard it with lots of other leaders as well. But this open door policy is something new. Can you define that in one sentence? Open door policy. What does it mean?
It's figurative, but also literal. So it's about everyone has equal access. You don't need to put something in my calendar, or while that's important and certainly to manage time as an output for me, but it's also, hey, it doesn't matter how big or how small it is, come and see me. That might be have a coffee, have a cup of tea. I've got this massive pot of tea that sits on my desk every day. And anyone who comes in, sit down, have a cup of tea. And that's how we work through. And it breaks down barriers. I've got a round table. No one sits at a square thing. There's no barriers. And that's what I mean by open door. There's no barriers. There's no hierarchy. It is we're working together for a common goal. Let's have a discussion. And that might be about what we're working on, or it might be a personal thing, because as we talked about human-centered leadership, these might be personal things. And if your mind is somewhere else, and we know from frontline operations as well, if you're distracted or if you're internally focused, you're not focused on delivering what we need to today. So let's work through those things and break down those barriers and get the best outcome for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. What an answer. I like that tea idea. Great example. Innovative idea. And it fixes issues quite easily. Tea on a table. Great.
Yeah, that's it. There's no barriers, mate. Come and have a pot of tea with me anytime.
Yeah, I will surely. Thank you. I got one more question. So we discussed quite a lot so far. I want to know about your future. You're not that old, quite young. I want to ask about a question about your future. So what ongoing advancements or trends in human factors, safety, engineering are you likely to leverage in future endeavors?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a hard one, mate. And I think your podcast has really motivated me to think about this a lot, because I've been listening to your other guests. They're all talking about AI, and I've not dabbled in AI myself as yet. I can see its value in terms of the system, assisting decision making and helping end users in terms of complex socio-technical systems. But in terms of me and aiding what I do, it's not something I've looked at as yet. And I know some people come to us for expert advice and want that knowledge that underpins that. So it might be that we use it in terms of data management or data mining, and then we still elaborate on that or interpret that and give meaningful expert advice based on that. I think the main thing that I'm looking at in tech advancements would be around 3D imaging and virtual reality. And I think a lot of user interactions we deal with is around mock-ups. And from a rapid prototyping, 3D printing has been a wonderful advancement. It allows us to quickly in CAD change some things, mock some stuff up, and rapidly turn that around and get it into an actual train or a control room or something like that. So 3D printing has been great. But the next step in that would be VR. And so progressing VR, having some probably a little bit more high fidelity than just the things that you see at the, down at the corner shop or at Westfield, where whole different stuff. I think we need a little bit more rigidity to some of it, combining virtual reality and low fidelity or high fidelity mock-ups, so it's a bit more tactile, I think better. And that's probably what I'd like to progress a bit further. I think that's a real trick, to allow quick engineering design changes, rapid feedback, and speeding up that iterative design process. It's a great thing.
Yeah, I agree. Completely agree. Wow. What a discussion it has been, Brandt. I don't want to let you go before you give us your one piece of advice, especially think about the new students or the youngsters who joining this industry, especially in human factors.
I think for not just new people to the railways, but also for anyone in leadership and anyone in any industry, is get out and understand the job. Don't sit in a room. Don't sit behind a desk trying to design or create policies or procedures from a position of authority. Get out and have a crack yourself. The most fun I've had has been sitting in a birthing suite, in a birthing pool myself, in my togs, understanding the role, building empathy of the end user. What are the tasks here that are important and how do we perform them? Climbing ladders, getting out with a train driver and doing some, train preps at 4 a.m. in the freezing cold in Ipswich, or sitting in a signal box when a SPAD has occurred and answering the phone and running around like a mad chook because 5 other people are ringing you instead of allowing you to do your job, which is manage the railway. I think these things are important and gives us a good basis of how then can we design a system that's actually going to work. And that also helps understand the nuance of sometimes user-centered design doesn't mean user-led design. And so not always can we go and ask an end user because they've only ever worked in a large lever frame signal box. And so ask them to then think of CBTC. It's that far away from what their knowledge is. But we understand the operation and the complexity of that, so we can put our hat on and work with that mindset. That's user-centered design versus user-led design. So, sorry, that's a long answer, mate. The answer is get off your bum, go out and have a look and understand how things work before you start making decisions or writing policies or designing anything.
What an advice. It's really a thought-provoking advice. I really appreciate your time, Brandt, and thank you for joining this podcast and sparing some time.
Thanks for having me, and g'day to all your listeners, and keep listening to RTS. Raman does a wonderful job here.
Thank you. I believe everyone listening to this podcast has got something to take away from today's discussion. If you like this podcast, please listen, follow, and share this podcast within your network. If you believe we should be sharing your story or someone within your network, there is a railway leader who should be here sharing his or her contribution to this industry, contact me on railwaytransportationsystems@gmail.com. Thank you for your time today. See you next fortnight. Until then, stay safe and take care of yourself.